What It Takes Radio Company is pleased to present another edition of the Stanley Jones Radio School for Fully Alive Living. And today we're going to be talking about how to live a transformed life. Perhaps be like Stanley Jones, and maybe even be like Jesus. And we're also going to help you get on the radio. Let's see what that can all be about. Greetings once again, ladies and gentlemen. It is a Sunday evening flowing into the workday week, and this is another episode, maybe another adventure, certainly another program in the Stanley Jones Radio School for Fully Alive Living. My name is Stan Hustad, and along with Ann Matthews Eunice, who is helping me put together this program as a part of her work with the very, very important E. Stanley Jones Foundation. What we are trying to do is to bring back an encore, both in terms of people and in programs and in awareness, to the incredible and important work of Stanley Jones, who has now been past over 50 years, but in many, many ways, the message that he gave 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago when he actually wrote the book, The Christ of the Indian Road, it not only was ahead of its times then, guess what? It still is ahead of its times. We don't really apply the word saint to too many people throughout the evangelical fellowship of many of the denominations of the Christian tradition. But I have a feeling that if we did, we would certainly, as many of my friends in the Catholic tradition do, they look back and say, I wonder if that person should be declared a saint. Well, I think probably Stanley Jones, along with many of the other saints, could certainly qualify for that status in three things. First of all, in his godly life. Secondly, in his faithfulness to Jesus. And thirdly, in his incredible wisdom, insight, and truth about, as I oftentimes say, God's wisdom and the Jesus story and sharing it with others. That's become a part of what I am saying as I'm trying to help people like you not only be preachers and teachers and sharers of God's word, but do exactly what I've done for over 45 years and am still doing, and that is to use the microphone and the camera and the modern media where it literally can go all around the world and be around for a whole long time, some of the stories of the man, the mission, and the messages of Stanley Jones. So I would be grateful if you would help Ann and I in this mission. The eStanleyJonesFoundation.com, eStanleyJonesFoundation.com, and please make a contribution and buy a few books. Those books of Stanley Jones that you haven't yet got or read, most of them are there in new and revised and easy to read editions. So please do that. And if you want to be a part of this particular outreach, and you can, first of all, you can pray for us, you can pay for us, and most of all, you could participate with us. We would welcome you raising your hand, maybe shaking your finger and say, here I am, or sending me an email or writing us a note and say, Stan, let's talk about this. I would be happy if perhaps I could share some of this wisdom that God has given me or some of the great challenges and great opportunities. This is what the man, Stanley Jones, in his wisdom and truth has done for me in my life. And this is now a weekly program. I would like to turn it into almost a little daily message, from Stanley Jones. So please reach out to me at stan@witradio.net, stan@witradio.net. And we'll tell you how you can help us and how you can participate and support with us and be all of those things with us. What I'd like to do today is carry on from what I said last week, that is what I would like to do. That I've been involved in radio, as I say, almost a half century. And if it goes back to my initial love of radio, it's a lot longer than that. And so I'm trying to help you people understand that maybe God is calling you not just to attend the retreats and read the books and of course occasionally share the message with others, either in teaching or in testimony or in preaching, but you can take advantage of the same opportunity that I have. Now, you can't perhaps do what I had, since I had the opportunity to be on some of the top world's radio stations, and I'm working with the BBC, Radio Netherlands, Transworld Radio, and broadcasting around the world. But I had the opportunity to do so because God gifted me with the voice and the opportunity, and I'm very grateful for that. But now, a simple microphone, a simple video camera, a simple computer, and knowing how to use some of the technology, which is not complicated, not easy, but not complicated, you could start a way to share your wisdom, your insight, your truth, and some of that may actually flow out of what the man, mission, and messages of Stanley Jones have done for you, as it has been for me. Let me share you just a brief another encounter about how this might work. I had a young student many years ago when he was 17, and I wasn't a whole lot older at that time, but he was a classic student and a very good, very bright young man, a wonderful chess player, and I was his chess coach. And that was literally where the player was better than the coach by far. And he went on to a good deal of success as a business consultant and working. And he was was a child and became a man of deep Christian faith and has very much influenced business practices all around the world. I'm very proud of him. His name is Joe Pine. I call him Bro Joe, Brother Joe. And he wrote a book that made history, was called The Experience Economy. And just recently, he asked me to help him on what he says might be the really big book. And it's going to be called, and it's in the process right now of being called, The Transformation Economy. And it was dealing with the stories of how people are transformed, not just changed, but truly transformed, and how they can transform their businesses and how they can use their businesses to help people transform their own lives. The transformation of the world. And he asked me to help him. And part of what he asked me to do is collect, because I'm a radio broadcaster, to collect and record stories of many people who had gone through significant transformations. By the way, do you have a story of some significant transformation that has taken place in your life? Your conversion, your call, the crisis you got through, some transformation. We would love to hear those stories. In fact, we now know, just as I tell people all the time, that the best way to teach is not with a sermon, not with a lecture, not by doing any of those things. The best way to teach is to tell a story. The master teacher came into the world, he told stories and asked questions. Unfortunately, some of us just preach sermons and give answers. Maybe we could learn something from the master when it comes to teaching and speaking and helping others. But of course, one of the things I did is I said, well, my friend, right now, one of my mentor heroes, I'm reading through for the second time his book. And many of you know which book I'm talking about. How to Be a Transformed Person. And he said he read it, and he said, Stan, that was incredibly helpful, because not only am I talking about transformed businesses and how to transform a business, but I'm learning more and more that it's about how a person has to do the transformation or find the way to lead a transformed life. And as I said with a smile, yeah, Joe, the old man probably knows a little bit about that. He said, you're not that old. And I said, well, I'm older than you considerably. And we are now in the process. And to show you the significance of it, the book is actually going to be published by Harvard Business School, the premier business school in America. He has that reputation. He has that credibility. And he said, well, you have to tell me more about Stanley Jones sometime. And I said, well, I'll be glad to do that. And so after we just finished the book, and it's now going through all that process of getting it published, which will be early next year. But in the meantime, we're trying to find more and more stories that we can tell people about how transformation can come into a person's life and business. And of course, that was the power of Stanley Jones. He is not in the business of TOT, teaching another theology or theory. He's not a teacher of theology. He is a storyteller of transformation. And so I would encourage you to begin to collect some of those stories yourself, be able to share with others. Oftentimes, I tell people, if someone ever asks you, well, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? Those typical questions. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? I just simply say to them, my name is Stan. Could I tell you a little story? And do that. Stanley Jones was a master storyteller. He was great with the one-liners. And I really believe, though obviously he didn't have that significant an opportunity, that if he were here today, he would very much be doing exactly what I'm doing right now, and what maybe you could be doing too. He would use the new technology because he was a missionary like me, an evangelist, not me, but a missionary. And he says, I want to use every way possible. Show up in person, preach sermons, tell stories, hold ashrams, hold roundtables, whatever it takes, which is by the name of my program radio station, What It Takes Radio, is I'll do whatever it takes to have the opportunity to, here we go, share God's wisdom and tell the Jesus story. You know what? That's what the Christian church and the Christian mission organizations, and that's what every one of them should be in the business of doing. Sharing God's wisdom and telling the Jesus story. And then asking people, do you want to live a transformed life? Do you want to live fully alive? As I oftentimes used to tell when I was doing a lot of business coaching, I said, please keep in mind that most people don't know what they want. They have no idea. So I said, remember, everybody wants the good stuff. Good things. They want the good stuff. Unfortunately, many of them don't know exactly what their good stuff is, and they don't know that their good stuff may not be really good stuff, and so they try to find the good stuff by doing bad stuff. It's as simple as that. They're trying to find the good stuff in life, and they land up doing bad stuff, and it doesn't work. As Stanley Jones would remind us, that when we do something, we either get a reward or we get a consequence. One or the other happens. We get one or the other. Everything matters. So could I encourage you very much to think about that, about how you might be a part of that. And I'd love to tell you more. Let me just kind of give you one thing that would drive when I was teaching. See, I wasn't a pastor or a preacher. I'm just a kind of overeducated disc jockey. But in effect, when I was teaching pastors and preachers in the mission work how to do a radio program, I gave them an assignment like this, because please keep in mind, in the radio program, they're not trying to reach, the ones they were into, they weren't trying to reach out to other Christians. They're trying to reach people who are not Christians, who are not followers of Jesus. And that's very different than being a pastor or a preacher in a church or school that's Christian tradition. And what I gave them is I said, you can talk about almost any topic, but here are 25, what we used, God talk words that we use all the time that I don't want you to use. And you could start listing them. You know, the big Christian words we use: justification, sanctification, sin. Those words, you can talk about those words, but put it in the word, or in the words, or in the explanation that is on their level and of their understanding. And I remember the one young man came up and he had this list. And he said, Stan, I confess almost all of my sermons, I use those words all the time. And now I get your point, that I'm using words that most non-Christians don't even understand. And I said, well, you know, Jesus kind of solved that for us. He said, well, he primarily told stories and asked questions. So I would encourage you to begin to think that way. I would love to come along with my friend Ann, and we could do a series of lessons and teachings and work with you on how to actually become another younger, much younger, perhaps Stanley Jones disciple, not only a Jesus disciple, but a bit of a Stanley Jones disciple, and how to begin to use not only his wisdom, insight, and truth, but the source of his wisdom, insight, and truth to be a better communicator, not only in your church or mission, but in your business. As I told you, I use Stanley Jones as much as a businessman coach. No Christian thing involved in that. I used him as a model for much of my teaching in business, as I ever did in my Christian broadcasting. That's my story. And I ask you to think about that. I also ask you to think about, that there's a real challenge to that. I remember reading a story of a famous Christian broadcaster in America who was very, very, very popular and very, very well known, and was a household name and had an incredible career. But in effect, it said that even after 35, 40 years of being in ministry, it said that at the age of 58, he had a transformation in which his love of God and the love of faith and the love of the church and the love of people and the love of being a minister, it said at the age of 58, he fell head over heels in love with Jesus. And he says, that changed everything. That changed everything. I remember reading that, and when I read it, I was 58. I remember praying and saying, Jesus, I really want to be like you. Not only head over heels in love with you, be like you. And I shared that with one of my pastor friends, and he listened carefully. And then he said, Stan, that can be a very dangerous prayer. And you know what? He was right. He was right. That's another story. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you will become a partner, both in helping pay for this, in helping to spread the good word, to participate with us, and to make a point of being very present. Remember, as I oftentimes say, it's always good to spend a little time in the upper room, but then we have to hit the upper road. And blessings on your Jesus travels as you go on the upper road. Till next time. Stan at witradio.net. Stan at witradio.net. Please help us out. I hope we are being a little bit helpful to you. And hopefully we can carry on with even more presentations and programs, and certainly coming to help be a part of your family, fellowship, congregation, so that the words of Stanley Jones will continue to change and transform lives. Till next time, for the School of Fully Alive Living, I'm Stan the Radio Man, saying bye for now.